Now, we've already talked about how the NHS and business will cope with coronavirus, but it's also, of course, putting pressure on other public services, like the police. Martin Hewitt, the chair of the National Police Chiefs Council, is helping to coordinate the police response to the virus. He joins us now from Westminster. Thank you for being on the programme today. Are the police ready for a crisis like this?
Well, I think the first thing to say, Sophie, is that right now police forces across the UK, officers and staff are out there doing what we do. They're in communities, keeping communities safe. They are protecting and helping the vulnerable, and they're also dealing with crime and criminality, and we will continue to do that. But as you would imagine, and the word unprecedented has been used a lot, we are facing an unprecedented situation, but we've done considerable planning. We have always planned to deal with pandemic, among other issues, and working with those other agencies that we will generally operate with. And we have our plans in place both at a force level across the UK, and as you say, I am coordinating now a national effort to make sure that we are able to cope with the issues that will come and face policing over the coming weeks and months.
You say there's plans in place to deal with the pandemic. I mean, what kind of things could we see? I mean, could we see police, for example, at supermarkets or helping assist the vulnerable?
So the first thing that we are doing is obviously looking at our own resourcing. This virus is indiscriminate and it will affect policing. So we've got lots of work going on individually in forces and nationally to make sure that we are what we're describing as organisationally distancing. So, for example, where you have a control centre that answers 999 calls, we've split those into 2 and 3 in forces. So we've got distance and we're keeping those services going. And everything we're doing is about keeping our operations going. We have written out in the last week, there's over 10,000 special constables around the country who volunteer to help policing. We are talking to those special constables, to their employers, about how they can assist as we become challenged around resourcing. And as you would expect, we will be prioritising how we operate, and we already prioritise on a day-to-day basis in policing and look at those things that represent the most threat, the most harm or risk, and we will continue to do that. The public are being, I think, very cooperative at the moment, and as we know, people are starting to pay much more attention to the measures that are being asked to be adhered to, and I would really encourage everybody to follow the guidance and the advice that's coming out. But what we are also doing is wanting people to come through other channels to policing, where you can reduce the demand on policing using digital methods, using other phoning on 101 and coming into us when you need us. But we stand ready to do the role that the police undertakes, i.e. keep people safe, protect those vulnerable people, and then also to help where we can help with the national effort to defeat the virus.
You were talking there a little bit earlier in your answer about prioritising. I just want to unpick what exactly that means, because of course the police will be facing additional pressures because of coronavirus. Does that mean that you are going to have to prioritise and certain lower level, for example, crimes may not end up being investigated?
I think the reality is we prioritise all the time, but we are in absolutely unprecedented situation now. And we can also see that the nature of demand on police and the crime that's committed will shift as everybody's lives are changing in the way that they are living their lives. That will shift, and we are monitoring that really closely to understand that shift. But we will have to prioritise as our resources become more stretched, which they inevitably will. We have to prioritise those things that are the most likely to cause harm or risk to people, and prioritise so that we are able to help the other services, particularly health, social care services, local government, to assist as we need to assist in fighting the virus.
And what kind of things would be deemed low priority then?
Well, I don't think it's about low priority. Anything that is causing serious harm to somebody will obviously be a priority. And policing is always prioritised. We are prioritised at the moment around violence and serious violence. We're prioritised about where the most vulnerable are impacted upon. So we are thinking really carefully and have been thinking about how we manage that prioritisation in these exceptional circumstances. There's been reporting that more people are more vulnerable digitally in this environment where many people are at home, and we've been doing work through our normal channels to put information out to people about how they can prevent themselves becoming vulnerable. You will have seen information that's coming out from government, coming out from the National Cybercrime Centre, so it's about getting information out to people so that they can protect themselves and keep themselves safe, and then us using our resources as they inevitably become stretched to do what we need to do around those things that require a stronger police presence and require us to protect people.
The message that I've been really struck from doing this programme, talking to a range of different guests, is how important social distancing is, and how that is the one thing that people believe could turn the tide, as the Prime Minister put, on the virus. Do you see, if there are stricter social distancing measures put in place in the coming weeks, that the police could have a role to play in ensuring some of these businesses stay shut, ensuring pubs close, and ensuring people perhaps don't go out unnecessarily?
So I think the first point to make is that the vast majority of pubs, clubs, businesses have been entirely compliant with the messaging that came out on Friday, and I think that's really positive, and I will hope that that would carry on. Of course, as we move forward, if there are issues with people ignoring the advice, and this is advice that is saving people's lives, that's how serious it is. If people are ignoring that advice, then clearly we will play our part. There are other licensing authorities that will have a role to play, but of course the police will play its part. And when you talk about people, if we end up on the streets, then I think the really important point to make is we will carry on doing our policing role, and we will carry on doing our policing role in the way that we police in the UK, which is that traditional role of being in communities, policing with consent, and we will be doing whatever we do in support of health officials. This is a health crisis first and foremost, and the really important point is that we stop the level of transmission getting higher and higher, and where there is a role for the police to play in that, we will play that role. And obviously what I will be doing is making sure that we are able to do that across the UK, and equally importantly keeping our staff safe, because our officers and staff will be out there in communities policing and assisting with this effort, and we've got to do everything that we can do to keep our staff safe, because they are as vulnerable as anybody else, and clearly they are as worried about their families and their loved ones as everybody else is.
Of course, as you say, police staff not completely invulnerable to coronavirus, which could put pressure on numbers. Do you see a situation where you could potentially be working together with the army?
So there's a range. We always have plans to be able to work with not just the military, but all sorts of other agencies that can assist us. We've put plans in place in every force to manage how we survive and how we continue to deliver our service if we have reduced numbers, particularly in specialist areas. What my teams are doing at the centre is we are able, as we already do for other big issues, we are able to move resources around the country to support areas that are particularly under pressure, and I'm getting daily reporting to understand precisely where we are in terms of the numbers of our officers and staff that are unable to work, either because they're sick or they're self-isolating. We will work with all parts of government, and we will provide support, and others will undoubtedly provide support to us. We have well-tested methods of working with the military, but I kind of restate the point. We are going to be capable of policing in the way that we have policed. Of course we will be stretched. That's why I ask people to think about placing demands on our service. But we are locked in at a local level with all the other emergency services and agencies that you would expect. And I'm locked in at a national level so that we are able to make the best use of our resources, not only to do our day job in policing, but also to support this extraordinary national effort to prevent the spread of the virus.
Martin Hewitt, thank you very much for being on the programme today. Thank you.